Good evening. Call to order the meeting of the Lakewood Planning Commission in a study session on July 17th, 2024. It is 7:05. Could we please take the roll?
Commissioner Buckley.
Here.
Commissioner Gribble-Eunice.
Here.
Commissioner Furman.
Here.
Commissioner Kolkmeyer.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill. Commissioner Overall. Commissioner Peters.
Here.
You have a quorum. And I'll note, I believe Commissioner Overall will be joining us a little later.
Very good, and hopefully Commissioner O'Neill will be able to join us as well. So, this is a study session on other legislative matters, the recommendations requested by the City Council regarding proactive community engagement process for major site plan review, as well as park-adjacent overlay guidelines. I'm going to take just a minute to re-summarize for the public and for all of us kind of what has transpired thus far. Back in January of 2024, the Lakewood City Council requested that the Lakewood Planning Commission study and provide recommendations on changes to the ordinance. And they, Mr. Clerk, I got a text saying that Commissioner Overall could not log on. The Lakewood Outlook account is locked out for some reason. Is that, does she need access to the her Lakewood account in order to use that link?
That's where I sent it to email. I could send it to, let me send it to her personal email.
Okay.
So tell her to look for that.
Okay.
Actually, I may not have access to that because I can't get to the drive
I
in
am
the other
gonna.
building.
I will send it to you.
Great.
So hopefully you will have that, and I will let her know. I'm not sure why that was. Okay. So, while we're waiting for that to get sorted out, remember there were two things we were asked about, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, and looking to see if we can reach hopefully at least majority support, hopefully unanimous support. One is to add a proactive community engagement process as a part of the major site plan pre-planning process, and potentially establish park adjacent overlay guidelines. Now, when the council talked about this prior to submitting it, they discussed the desire for a standardized and expanded stakeholder involvement earlier in the process of evaluating a major site plan. And as it relates to areas adjacent to parks, councilors also commented that the commission should take into consideration current ward inequities regarding open space and parks. And finally, councilors expressed that recommendations should be simple and clear. We held a hearing on this and received a lot of information. I am going to just go through a quick list of what the various ideas were. And I do that not to express support or opposition for any of them, but I think it's important when people took the time to provide us that sort of insight that we ought to make sure it's not forgotten in the process. So what did we hear? One, send all major site plans to the Planning Commission if 3 or more city councilors asked for that to be done. That was a particular suggestion. Secondly, increase the radius of notice on major site plans to potentially the entire city. 3, provide website sign-up option for notice regarding all major site plans. 4, require 2 community meetings on all major site plans. 5, increase the geographic information system ability on the city's website to sort and find projects. 6, require developments to have a developer oversight committee with sanctions for developer misdeeds. 7, all major site plans over a certain number of units would go before the Planning Commission for a full hearing, and it was suggested that perhaps 10 residential units or 40 residential units might be appropriate thresholds. 8, send to the Planning Commission whenever there was a trigger. And this was described by a commenter as that there would be likely a nuisance, a likely trespass, if the developer was seeking anything of value, if it was adjacent to a park, and indeed anything that might prove to be controversial. 9, require developers to sign waivers of their vested property rights, acknowledging that the rules can change throughout the process. 10, require involvement of neighborhood associations. 11, hold town hall style meetings rather than public hearings on all major site plan projects. 12, if over a certain threshold, and again it was suggested perhaps 40 units, that there must be a demonstration of market need by the city rather than relying on the property owner to assume that risk. And 13, to adopt the approach of the enhanced development menu, which will incentivize or require engagement. So again, that's just a summary. If any of you recall additional suggestions that were made, but those are the ones from looking back at the hearing testimony. Did you want to have? Sure. Those were the ones that I recall. I'm going to mention just a couple of other things we heard that I think were certainly important to me, I would hope would be important to others. There is a fundamental misconception about the pre-planning process in that, and we've heard a lot of these comments, that the staff always supports the developer's application, that by the time it gets to us, it's already done. We heard from the director that 9 out of 10 that start the pre-planning process do not make it to a final decision or a final recommendation. And that means that there are dramatic changes through the pre-planning process. When 90% of the applications are either being withdrawn or modified, that's an important thing for us to consider in terms of at what point in the process is effective to participate. Secondly, I thought it was a very good point that was made as well, which is that the single most effective point to comment or participate in what is likely or approved to be what should be developable on a particular location is long before the application is ever filed, is when the original zoning is set. So if the objection is a particular scale of a building, a particular type of use, things like that, those are best dealt with 5 or 10 years earlier when the zoning is put in place. And that's a challenge, obviously. And then third is this question of vested property rights, because we've heard a lot about it. Our current ordinance is quite clear. It's also quite consistent. Because we live in a constitutional democracy, there are property rights. They are recognized by the Constitution. A lot of court decisions on this. So at some point, property owners do have a vested right in relying on the existing rules, and they, after that point, they cannot be changed without offending some of those principles regarding protection of private property rights. So we want to keep that in mind as well. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to everyone else, is that the goal on this recommendation is just like our last several. Hopefully tonight we'll have a fruitful discussion and we'll find out if there is at least majority support for particular recommendations, and if there are, then those will be drafted in a form that everyone can see, and then we will go back to a public hearing process where the public will be able to comment on that on Lakewood Speaks as well as in person. Hopefully that's gotten everybody back to the same place on this particular issue, because I know it's been several months since we engaged on it. And with that, I would invite discussion from commissioners on what types of recommendations they would like us to consider in this study session. Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate that recap of several meetings that were now months ago. Very helpful to get my mind back into all the things that were said then, and thank you to all the members of the public who showed up months ago to give those recommendations. I think your note at the end, Chairman, about the need to protect property rights is well said, and that's an important principle, not just, because of legal liability or constitutional reasons. I just do think that private property rights are important. I think that if we want to encourage good development in the city, the kind of development that we want to see, we do need to, as the comment was, lay out good zoning rules in advance and, have clear rules of the road, so that when applications come in, they are conforming to something that is what the community wants. And to that end, I've been very encouraged by a couple of the comprehensive plan advisory group meetings that I've attended so far, where we are discussing exactly those kinds of issues of what kind of things we want in the comp plan, what kind of goals and outcomes that our zoning code over the next 15 years is going to be striving for. So we're at a great time in Lakewood right now to set those clear rules of the road, and by doing that, we don't have chaos later when a development application comes in, and then suddenly everyone makes up their mind about what the community wants. It's important, if we're going to get any sort of quality development, that we know the rules in advance, and so those are very important principles to me. So I carefully took notes of your 13 suggestions from the community. And the one that I think is most promising of those suggestions, that also I think adheres to these principles of setting out good ground rules in advance and respecting property rights and respecting what the code says you are legally permitted to do, and respecting the uses by right that we have, will be to use the enhanced development menu to incentivize community engagement, because at that point, since it is an incentives-based system, the developer has their rights and the rules of the road, but it's not too late, and it is a good time to get meaningful public input that can still shape in meaningful ways the direction of the project without, running afoul of, the principles of property rights so egregiously that we just don't have any developers doing any work at all in this town. And so to that end, I have provided to staff tonight and to all the 7 commissioners a one-page write-up. I want to give a shout-out to Commissioner Gribble-Eunice, who began a draft with this after he and I spoke about it over in the last month or so. And I have revised a little bit based on some input from him. And so I think the two of us are ready to present this idea tonight for how we can add a menu item to the enhanced development menu in the zoning code to enhance community engagement onto a project. I've handed it out. I hope everyone's got a chance right here before the meeting to read it. I'm happy to give a short presentation on that specifically with your permission, Chair, or I'll let others comment too first if you want to do that.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate that, and I think it would be useful also for the public to give a little more explanation about what an enhanced development menu is, because folks that aren't, doing these sorts of projects every day may not realize it's a tool that we currently have in our zoning ordinance that is directed at primarily sustainability, I believe. But
that's right.
If you want to expand on that a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So the enhanced development menu is an entire chapter of the zoning code. It's fairly new. I believe it was just about 2 years ago that the Planning Commission and then the City Council approved the latest version of the enhanced development menu, and then there was a version 1.0 maybe just a few years before that. And so there's not a lot of projects that have been built yet in Lakewood that have used this because the pre-planning process does take so long. But it is required for anything new that comes in now and going forward. And so the general idea is that based on the square footage of any project to build anything in Lakewood, so many points on this menu are required. The formula is 1 point for every 1,000 square feet, generally. I think anything 10,000 square feet or less is 10 points minimum. But generally, a lot of the larger developments of the sort that the community is concerned about and is triggering the need for this discussion tonight will be following above 10,000 square feet. And so in the 1 point per 1,000 square foot threshold, there is a caveat that it cuts off at 150 points for projects of 150,000 or more square feet. So that's the most you can possibly get. And the idea is that there are all sorts of items on this menu that the developer has the option of choosing. They do have to choose a total number of points equaling their goal based on their project size. But they are free to pick and choose which items of the menu they do. And so the idea of this menu is generally sustainability. And so to that end, if you get a LEED certified building, for example, that's the first item on the menu, you just get all the points you were required, 100%, whatever that is, because just a LEED certified building is just such a objectively good thing from an environmental ecological point of view. There are many other things on there. You can do energy efficient buildings. I think this is something for low carbon concrete, recycled building materials, electric vehicle chargers, bike stations, bicycle repair stations, I think, are on there, like public art, amenities for the community, like a basketball court or playground, I think is something that might be on there. The whole list is not in front of me, but I know there are 28 items specifically on there. And to your point, Jared, yes, they are mostly focused on sustainability items, and sustainability interpreted to mean, environmental goals that match with the city's sustainability plan. I think an important note here is that sustainability classically is broader than just a pure synonym for environmentalism, right? There's the three legs of sustainability. It's there's a social aspect and a fiscal aspect of sustainability that go along with the environmental aspect of sustainability, and all those things need to be sustainable into future generations, so that we're not taking more environmental resources, fiscal resources, or social resources from tomorrow for use today without due regard for tomorrow. Those are the general principles of sustainability that inform this menu, right? But it does very heavily lean towards incentivizing items right now that I would put in the environmental leg of that, three-legged stool of social and fiscal impacts as well, right? And so I think that community engagement and dialogue and trust building and collaboration between developers and interested members of the community is something that does foster the social aims of sustainability, which we don't have a lot of things on the menu that do that right now. And so the idea would be to add something like that also speaks to this proactive community engagement. And so, again, on this handout I gave to the commissioners, it summarizes it, but briefly, yes. Okay, Commissioner Gribbly-Eunice wanted to...
Commissioner Gribb, jump in.
Thank you. And I just want to kind of insert one thought as you're about to jump into the actual item. One of the interesting things about, or I guess the reason why the enhanced development menu was kind of brought up as a potential avenue for this community engagement process is that in the intent of the EDM, it does list that it's about creating a positive investment in the community, either by directly providing community amenities or by minimizing the impact on our limited resources. So while the menu does have, the vast majority of the items are sustainability related, it does seem appropriate to, as Commissioner Buckley is explaining, to encourage community engagement as a potential means to gaining additional community amenities within the EDM. Mm-hmm. And then one other thing I just wanted to add real quick before we jump into the actual item is in terms of applicability of the EDM. This idea, I think, has a lot of potential behind it because it's trying to set up a win-win situation for both the community and for the developers, where, you know, in a ideal scenario, community is getting what it wants and the development's getting added value by what they're implementing, as well as meeting their point requirements in a potentially efficient manner. And in terms of what the EDM or who's required to follow the enhanced development menu, it's nearly any new building or large renovation within the city of Lakewood. You know, for example, it's any building with a gross square footage over 2,500 square feet. So beyond your maybe typical single-family house, even a larger single-family house would have to go through this process and meet their points. So I guess I just wanted to note that this is something that almost any new development within Lakewood would have an opportunity to fulfill their points by engaging with the community, which, you know, again, is just going back to our directive. But thanks, Steve.
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you, Commissioner Gribliunas. Yes, some important details of our thinking summarized there, so I appreciate that, Commissioner. So getting into the meat of it, this is the idea that we've sketched out. I don't think that Commissioner Gribliunas and I think that this is final in any means. We want and value the input of this commission. And of course, if we reach consensus of some sort to formalize this, there'll be public hearings and we'll get further input from the community. This is just a starting point for discussion tonight, this draft that I have before you. So there would be two options of how to get points on the enhanced development menu by public engagement that we've outlined. So option number one would be an informational meeting. It would be akin to the meetings that are currently held when a special use permit application is submitted, and so that requires property owners within 300 feet of the property to be notified by mail, and neighborhood organizations within a quarter mile of the property are notified of the project, and they would hold a meeting similar to the special use just to inform the community and to establish a point of contact between interested community members and the developer. And we thought that would be just a nominal number of points we assigned for it. That's just kind of a swag. And a caveat too that you couldn't get points for this if you're already doing a special use permit or rezoning, since that meeting is essentially already required, and the intent of this is to go above and beyond what developers are already doing. So that's kind of the simplest option one. It's just simpler. Hey, this is the project. We're here to tell you about it and be aware. Option two, which we think is more substantive and we hope is more enticing, is to have a more interactive meeting. Again, following the same notification procedure to the surrounding community, or to post a website. And the website could even have a larger notification radius and larger area of interested citizens submit online feedback. And there, the developer would summarize and document what the feedback from the community is, and if they could demonstrate that the community had specific ideas, then they would get points for that. So the first way they could get points is that we would give one bonus point for anything that's already on the EDM that the community suggests. So if the community really wants a green roof, I believe that's an EDM item, then the developer can go ahead and build that green roof, and they get the points they would get for the green roof, plus they'd get an extra point on the menu because they did it specifically at the as a result of dialogue with the community. You know, it could be an art installation or anything else in that way. And then secondly, the idea goes into awarding points based on anything the community suggests that's not part of the EDM item. So if there's really something that the community feels like it needs and that the project could integrate and the developer is able to do it, then based on the dollar amount spent, there would be points assigned. And so there's up to 50 possible points for dollar amounts assigned. The idea was we established 3 tiers with a decreasing dollar amount as you spend more. And the intent and logic behind that is that for the largest projects that are going to naturally create the most intense community interest, by decreasing the dollar threshold per point, it goes down from like $3,500 per point to $2,500 per point as you spend more and more. That becomes enticing because there is a fee in lieu in the EDM menu that anyone can opt for that's $4,000 per point. And so the idea, if you kind of look at how points are assigned for other items in there and take a rough swag at what the cost might be, it's generally trying to incentivize the developers not to pay a fee in lieu, but to spend the money that is less than the fee in lieu to earn an equivalent number of points so the community gets real benefits rather than just the city getting a pile of money. And so we did that same approach with the features suggested by the community, decreasing it as you go to more and more points, down from 3,500 down to 2,500. All of that's a bargain compared to the $4,000 fee in lieu. So why would the developer not want to do what the community is asking? That's the logic there. And then finally, for this kind of open-ended option of include things in the project that the community wants, we propose capping the total number of points at 1/3 of the total that are required. On larger developments, we feel this is important because we don't want the community engagement piece that we are adding to crowd out the other very worthy items that are already on the menu that are having real bona fide sustainability benefits. We want to bring a little bit more balance and community perspective to the menu, but we don't want to totally transform the intent of what the menu is for. So that's the reason for a cap. So 50 points would be the maximum anyone could ever get from this if it was a very large project that required the maximum of 150 points. That's more than 150,000 square feet. That's a very large project. I think probably there's only a handful every few years in Lakewood that would reach that size. I've talked enough. Thank you.
Commissioner Furman.
I hadn't even gotten the button yet.
I could tell.
I was leaning in. I realized my mic had been on the whole time. It's a good thing I wasn't whispering terrible things. I actually like this approach because the feeling I have generally about this is, and I think you discussed this, we've discussed it in the past, is that the idea of community engagement is best at the zoning phase when we set the rules of the road such that, because if we get into a place where there is levels of arbitrary control, it's a little bit of a slippery slope, and I don't want to give into that informal fallacy, but the concept is that whose rights then are more important, the person who owns the property or the people who don't want to see the thing. But if everybody understands the rules of the road, that's the best first step. So the community involvement in the zoning is the first best step. And then I think to be able to still work within those confines is to do just what you guys are describing here, which is encouraging it, incentivizing it with these elements on the EDM. And then, the only other thing that I think we discussed in the past was the idea of perhaps enhancing the what is it called? The planning dashboard with a little bit more information so people are informationally a little bit more aware. But I think the reality is if people are encouraged and they're aware of the fact that zoning changes can and will be going on potentially at the same time as the comprehensive planning, somebody implements something along these lines, and I think this is solid, and you provide a little bit more information in the planning dashboard, I think that is the most fair approach that doesn't run the risk of, you may be happy about being able to arbitrarily influence something today and then very disappointed when you find that somebody else arbitrarily influences something the next day. So I think this is the best approach. So I applaud the work you guys did. So.
I don't know if you were going for your button or not. No?
Yes. There you go. Great request to speak.
Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, thank you. Couple questions on this. Is it purely optional? So it's an optional way to earn points through the EDM?
It's mostly optional. I should make one important caveat, which is on this printout here. We envision at least 1 point from the public engagement being required if the project was within a certain radius or proximity to a park or open space. For purposes of discussion, we started with 300 feet, the same as the general notification radius, but willing to entertain other ideas there. Again, even for projects where it is not mandatory, we are trying to strike a balance with writing it. And again, the rest of the commission's input is very valuable here to see if Commissioner Grebley-Eunice and I did this right. We're trying to strike a balance of making this not quite mandatory, but so extremely enticing that it's going to happen quite a bit, especially on the larger projects.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not sure that, I've had my questions on the EDM in terms of the fee in lieu, in regard to how much it incentivizes folks to actually use items on the menu versus paying the fee in lieu. And I guess I would be interested to know if Paul has any feedback on that before I proceed.
Mr. Rice?
Right. I would need to get some assistance to give you the most accurate information, but I can tell you generally. So when we implemented EDM, it was a little light, and most of the projects that came in met the points. I think we had 18 months or so of evaluation. We made some amendments, made it a little more robust, more points and so forth. We did have a couple projects choose the fee, but most of the site plans that come in, they choose to meet the point system, and they can figure that out. So not everybody that's coming in, let's say this, paying the fee is the exception, not the norm at this point in time. But I can't give you exact numbers. There have been a couple, but it's so few and far between that I can't recall an exact project.
Thank you, that's helpful. And what are they typically meeting the points with? Like, how many have come through and chosen LEED certification?
That's the example I was actually going to use. It's kind of interesting, planner discussions and so forth. There is some pushback, about meeting the standards and so forth. And then when they start actually looking what they can get points for, we've noticed several projects recently have gone completely electrification, and then in doing so and hitting the other points, they're meeting LEED as well. So these things kind of start to feed into each other, and we're getting some projects that are actually getting LEED certification, and that wasn't their intent when they had started that project. So it's a LEED certification is after the fact is not, but it's kind of a circumstance of going through that process.
How many would you say?
I know there have been 3 or 4 in the past year. A lot of the projects that we're seeing also aren't necessarily large projects, so they're not receiving the LEED certification. So the number, when we're looking at commercial projects are kind of light in Lakewood. So most of when I'm talking about projects, the larger residential projects, we're seeing 2 or 3 of those a year, and at least 1 or 2 of those is getting LEED certification.
Okay, I mean, I guess I would want to see some data, some actual data on this. And, I certainly appreciate the art installations, and at the same time, they're not as robust as some of the environmental requirements that could be chosen for points. And, I appreciate having art as, a smaller point level. It certainly enhances the community and the built environment, and raises morale. There's a lot of benefits. At the same time, we want to see some of the the really robust environmental projects, and sometimes those can be costly, and that was what I had heard previously, that some of the paying for the points and the cash in lieu was a better alternative. So I guess we would need to see some data and statistics on that. I guess my concern is that being that it's optional, I'm not sure it's going to meet the community need that's been expressed to us. So I, could support something like this in combination with a requirement that all projects that are 10 or more units go before Planning Commission, which is like a very simple, very straightforward, easy to understand, and I think it would really meet the need that the community has expressed. So I guess my feeling is, I think there's a few tweaks to this that maybe I'd want to discuss and recommend, and I think it could be very helpful in addition to the 10 or more units going in front of Planning Commission, which having the enhanced development menu and the pre-meeting community outreach would help facilitate. So I feel like they really work together synergistically. And I guess my other point would be, I think the one point for being near a park or an open space is probably a bit low. But I'd be interested in, your thoughts on that. And of course, the synergistic relationship with something that puts it in front of Planning Commission, meets the clear need that the public had expressed and we had received in comments. I think that would, and that this would work really well with that. So maybe the two of them together as a package is what I would recommend.
Commissioner Gribb-Leonis.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for those comments, Commissioner Peters. I just had a follow-up question to make sure I'm kind of combining these correctly. When it comes to, you're saying that you could support this if we also move forward with the potential 10 units or more to go, or every new development with 10 or more units to come before Planning Commission. Are you saying that you're not suggesting to combine that with this item? You're saying that this item can move forward independently of that and that we just explore multiple options, right?
No.
Commissioner Peters.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm saying that I think together. So I don't necessarily think this meets the intent that was expressed to us alone. I think it's a really excellent idea, but I don't think it meets the intent. And so if it was this and the 10 or more units going in front of Planning Commission, I think that would absolutely meet the intent, and that having the enhanced development menu and these options would really facilitate that process of going in front of Planning Commission.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just as a matter of procedure, is it just okay to talk across?
Some habits are hard for me to break. My experiences with the legislature, where you got to make it clear on the record, the audio record, who is speaking. So you're supposed to be recognized each time. I know it's clumsy.
Just making sure.
Yeah,
that's fine.
It's a good approach.
Okay. Thank you.
So that everyone always knows who it is. There's also a delay in the camera that flips from person to person, so sometimes it can be confusing.
Okay.
But go ahead, Commissioner Gribb-Leonis.
Thank you. And thank you for the clarification, Commissioner Peters. I guess I would say I wouldn't support that change being combined with this item. I think the spirit of this is trying to develop a trusting relationship between developer and community, and again, try to find and encourage and incentivize this scenario where the community is getting ideally what they're looking for, and the developer, again, is meeting the criteria for the project. And I think I know where I'm coming from with that statement is, I really believe that to have a really engaging community process, you want the developer and the design team to be coming to the table with the best of intentions. And by this being an incentivized or optional item that could be very appealing to them, I don't want to force them into having to meet with the community and having to go through this community engagement process, when if we could just tweak the item to be appealing enough to where everyone's going to want to do it. Again, it's just trying to create that win-win scenario for everybody. Thank you.
Commissioner Furman.
So I was trying to play devil's advocate as I think about the community engagement, because that's the one that I'm most concerned with, is how that happens, right? Because I will admit, one of the phrases somebody in the public had mentioned that has stuck in my head ever since it was said, because it was the sort of scariest one to me, which was, I just think you should be able to have discretion. And the idea of discretion as a blanket statement about things like this feels dangerously open because of, as much as, again, as I said before, as much as people are happy about discretion when it serves their goal, people can often get very upset about discretion when it doesn't serve their goal. So if you were having the public engagement meeting for whatever, 10, 40, whatever the unit number was, or if you were having if it came before Planning Commission, I'm assuming, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, the only way I can imagine that really being functional, again, trying to avoid the discretion piece of this, would be something like a normal hearing where essentially they're showing compliance with all the standards that are listed in a major site plan, right? Because and this is the key piece to me, which is it shouldn't be arbitrary. It should be based on what is in the ordinance now, which is that it meets all the elements of Articles, 3 through 10, I think. And so it would be a fairly lengthy findings of fact that we would then hear and then say we agree with the findings of fact. Is that the assumption? Because I'm assuming, the one thing I will say is I'm not sure the other piece of that is at what point it would come to us, right? I assume it would be only after it had been reviewed and denied, and then the planning department themselves had said, this is one that we think will go through. Is that, anyway, trying to get to an understanding of what we're really saying when we say coming before Planning Commission.
And that sounds like a question for Commissioner Peters?
It is.
Commissioner Peters.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate that question. And I think, as you're aware, on the Planning Commission, it's not just a matter of discretion. We have certain criteria and guidelines that we're looking at. So when it would come in front of the Planning Commission, while it is an opportunity for the public to express comments, we are bound to very specific guidelines that are very, that are defined within the comprehensive plan, within the code and whatnot. The way that I see this synergistically working is that sometimes the things that people come up and ask about are outside of the purview of what we are evaluating projects on. And in a lot of cases, that is really where the need lies. And by working and having this EDM menu and this opportunity and this outreach, then it's an opportunity to exchange and for the developer and the community to work together. And as it comes in front of the commission, we have a defined set of goals, but we also are monitoring how well is this working. Maybe there are some rules or regulations that we may need to change. Like, we don't have visibility because this is administratively approved. We don't have visibility into where the concerns lie all of the time. Like, when it elevates to a point where a very large critical mass comes, and sometimes, as we've seen, they comment on things that are outside of the scope because they want to get a message to us, and it's not within the purview of what we're looking at in that moment, or even within the purview of what we can decide on. But the information comes in front of us. And so the commission, and there is a public record, and there is visibility, and I think that's the way that the change that needs to be made is going to be communicated directly to this body that has the ability to, and because, right, very often, it's not in front of city council, it's not in front of planning commission, it's administratively approved, and there is not that visibility. And then again, this offers an opportunity, and there may be refinements to this, right? As it comes before the planning commission, then it's an opportunity to see, are these options, are they working? Is there community satisfaction? And then we have the opportunity to potentially make changes, or, city council, however that process is initiated or work.
Is your light on, or that's previous? Well, it's an interesting perspective, and we certainly have heard the desire for things to come before the Planning Commission. The thing that I think is most difficult about that is that's the last step. And what I think this whole recommendation was about was getting community involvement earlier, rather than it being at the last step. So we know that in the pre-planning process, 9 out of 10 applications get modified or withdrawn. One of the things that I thought was really right on in this, with this proposal on the EDM, is that that's front-loaded. It's meant to be at the very beginning of the project. And I see that as an engagement that is earlier in the process. So I think that that's the better time to get input. So I found that kind of one of the benefits of this proposal. Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I didn't express it as clearly as I could have, because that was exactly the point that I was making, is that this is an elective process that they could elect to do, and it would be at the beginning. And by the time it reaches Planning Commission, which is the end of the process, we would be able to see how effective that was. And we would have a lot of visibility into it. And that, if it's working, then there would be support. And that all of those pieces would be worked out earlier in the process. Like, we've seen many applications come before us where that step has been taken and there's support, it's not contentious. And so this just formalizes the process that, that can be done electively, but in some cases it's not, and they get rewarded for it, certainly. And the reward is that it's a facilitated process, and that community input has come in earlier, and that the community and the developer are working closely together earlier in the process. And by the time it comes up for approval in the Planning Commission, then it is no longer contentious, because that has been worked out through this process electively earlier on. And that's where the synergy works.
Commissioner Buckley.
I'm going to get a little philosophical. What are planning commissions for? Why are we here? Why do we exist? I think, as has been stated clearly, that we all agree that we don't exist as a discretionary body. When we review cases that come to us, we have criteria that we are to evaluate. But if all the criteria were just objective and black and white and easy, check a box or not, it's kind of a waste of everyone's time to have the big drawn-out process of a public meeting and all of us come up here to, say, yes, this is just obvious black and white, and 2 and 2 makes 4, so you're good. The criteria that we are evaluating in most of our cases and that makes our function and existence of a body useful is that there are some criteria that have some subjectivity to them, right? Does this development meet the intent of the zoning district? Does it meet the intent of the comprehensive plan? These things are subject to some opinion and interpretation. Most site plans are approved administratively by staff because most site plans are required to adhere to criteria that are not terribly subjective. They are much closer to the objective black or white, yes or no, you did this or you did not do this. And so any rule in conjunction with an EDM idea or in conjunction with any other idea that just is a blanket statement, just because you propose 10 units or just because you propose 40 units or any other just arbitrary number, you must come before the Planning Commission. My fundamental question is for what and for why? So that, we can check the boxes that are just straightforward and not really subjective. Our highest and best purpose is to be hearing from the public at the end of a development process, as Commissioner Kolkmeyer pointed out, because that's when we do it, when things are subjective and when things are like long-lasting impacts to property rights, not just of an applicant, but of surrounding properties, right? And certainly like rezoning, special use permits, waivers, all those things that the Planning Commission does, they certainly have that nexus of subjectivity and impacts on other people's property rights. And if a zone district allows more than 10 dwelling units, and they can meet all the other criteria of the zone district, I think to say that the Planning Commission should hear that kind of acknowledges this erroneous idea that the reason planning commissions exist is to exercise this arbitrary discretion over whether or not something happens. I don't want to live in a city or a world where appointed, not elected officials ourselves, like us, or in often cases even elected officials, just have this arbitrary power to say yes or no to something based on personal feelings. I much prefer a system of the rule of law where the rules are set out in advance and the objective things are handled ministerially and the subjective things come to bodies like us to exercise not discretion but like some judgment and some knowledge of our broader goals and applying to the facts of the case. There's a distinction there between total arbitrary discretion and just applying some judgment to criteria that are subjective. And so, just out of hand. A suggestion like a project has 10 residential units, therefore it comes to the Planning Commission, it has 40 residential units, pick a number, I don't care what it is. That's just arbitrary to me. It doesn't make sense. It's not using the Planning Commission for what we're for. I couldn't support that. I know Commissioner Peters means well and wants to be more responsive and make the idea that we've proposed here more robust, and I absolutely do welcome that, but I think in the specific idea that you suggested, Commissioner Peters, I unfortunately couldn't support that, but am open to other suggestions.
Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, thank you. And, I think, again, the point that you make actually supports what I'm saying in that it's not black and white, but it is, there are guidelines that have to be followed. And it is the interpretation of the individuals on the Planning Commission. How well does this fit with the comprehensive plan? How well does it fit? And so that is where a body of individuals, more than one, is actually better than a single individual, because we can play devil's advocate, because we do have multiple perspectives and not just a single perspective. And I think that's where the concern is. And I don't think that these issues that are coming before the single planning director, in which, again, I want to point out that we are one of the few cities that does it this way, right? In general, these matters are seen before planning commissions, and you can look at, we can look at, I don't have the statistics, but I can bring those back, and we can, it's not just an administrative decision. For the major site plan review.
Well, I would certainly like to see that, because I don't think that's accurate. Administrative analysis by professional planners is more typical than sending everything to plan commissions among important larger cities. Small towns, perhaps, but that's not Lakewood. And I think that that's really kind of, and I think I understand your point now probably better than I originally did. You talk about a single individual's perspective, but who you mean is the paid, professional, trained city employee whose job it is to make that evaluation. It is the director of planning that you do not want to make the decision. You would prefer to have part-time individuals that are appointed who do not have that level of training. That would be preferred in your view, Commissioner Peters?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to respond to that. One of the things that the commission has the benefit of is the input from the paid staff, and they have the benefit of the input from the public as well. And so actually, I do prefer that, and that is why, as you noted, the larger cities do it this way, and smaller cities may not because of resources or for whatever reasons, I don't know. But we are not just a small town city. We don't have 4,000 residents. We are over 100,000 residents, and we are growing, and we are part of a larger major metro area. And I think that this is a valuable step for us to take as a city.
And I apologize, Commissioner Peters, I did not understand what you just said. The point is that larger cities have to rely more on professional staff, not less. You seem to be thinking it's the opposite?
Well, I heard what you said, and I was responding. What you had shared was that some of the larger cities might be having the planning commission reviewing the major site plans.
No.
I don't have the data
No, it's the
and
opposite. It's the opposite.
statistics on that.
It's the opposite.
And I guess I didn't have the list in advance or understand. I mean, I could have maybe looked into some of these statistics and provided them I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to discuss, but I mean, that this was going to come up in terms of the specifics of the list that we had. I do see that we are in a philosophical discussion, but I do think there are facts that can inform this discussion. And because of that, I would like the opportunity to come back and present some of those facts before we move forward, because I do believe that there is a synergy between having an elective process earlier where there is community engagement, and then a process where the community has an opportunity to provide public input. And this is not a new concept. This is a concept that exists in other cities very successfully. Thank you for
Commissioner Buckley.
consideration.
I'm going to try to lay the groundwork of maybe a compromise to get some unanimity. I think for the reasons I said, I made very clear. I'm not interested in the planning commission just being told to do things that are not really our business. But one idea that our chairman threw out at the beginning that was brought up by community members months ago was at least 2 community meetings. The draft that we've prepared of this enhanced development menu item as it is right now is for perhaps 1 meeting if you want to, or just a website for engagement early on. And that informs what the community input is, and the developer chooses among all that input what they want to implement, and they get points for what they implement. I do see some value in terms of trust building and reinforcement, that a second community meeting to verify, hey, we heard this and this is what we're doing, to make sure the developer's on the right course and heard directly has some value. And I think within the context of this optional EDM item, that's not going afoul of any principles of that I would consider important for objectivity versus subjectivity, and who makes those kinds of decisions, and property rights and all those other things. So maybe there's still room in this process that was drafted for a second meeting for some additional points to come back to the community and say, we listened and we heard, and this is what we're doing. And that provides an opportunity to extend the dialogue too, if the community wants to say, well, but what about this too? And maybe there's some more trust building and transparency in that, which I think is what you're going for, Commissioner Peters. And that would be a way that, potentially I could support it. I haven't fleshed out that as well as everything else I've written, but maybe it's an idea of a way that, something like what you want could be accomplished, but in a way I'd be a lot more comfortable with.
Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to be really clear that I did not have a copy. I didn't have this to review before this meeting. And so that's what I was speaking to, that I didn't have an opportunity. I didn't know what we were going to be speaking about specifically, and I did not have an opportunity to review it or to provide data that would be valuable to the positions that I have, that I am providing in response to it. And so if I had had this in advance, then I could have come more prepared. It seems like our focus is just on this and maybe not on the other items that were provided in the list. And if I had known that, I could have really prepared for this in particular. But I can, give, and certainly, I have some thoughts, again, on some of the other items on the list that I could have also prepared. And you're right that the trust building and that reinforcement is what I'm getting at. You're absolutely correct. And, I think 2 meetings would help. But I do think that the proof is in the pudding. And if there is a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and I don't think that, we can get the data on how many projects are over 10 units, how many over 40 units, and how many might come before the Planning Commission in regard to that cutoff. But I think that that's where we will see where that trust and that has been successful, because when they come in front of the Planning Commission, we would see that in regard to the comments and the process. So yeah, again, I would just ask, because I did not see this and I didn't have the opportunity to prepare and put together, because I do think we can make a recommendation that is informed based on data and statistics, and that would be the proper way to go. And again, I did not have the opportunity to review this before the meeting to put that information together. And I am very, data and statistics are important, and I think there's a lot of merit in this. Again, I think in combination, and I'd like to have the opportunity to provide the data to support that.
Just for clarification for the public, no one saw this document beforehand. This is a commissioner's initiative to bring a substantive idea. Did the homework, brought it to us. The other ideas, like what you've suggested, have been around for a long, long time. We've heard this notion of sending more things to the Plan Commission for a very long time. So if that is the thing that you wanted to be prepared for, I think we're all ready to talk about that, and I think a number of commissioners have spoken to that quite clearly. I'm going to go to Commissioner Furman next.
I guess what I wanted to do was just make sure that I had a distinction. It's sort of a question on this, and it pertains a little bit to the concept of a synergy. Since really the item on our agenda, right, was public engagement on major site plan, right? And in a lot of ways, I like this, and I think this is a good approach. And I guess to be totally fair, this is in a way sort of an alternative to giving public engagement in general, because of the fact that we know that it is difficult to effectively have public engagement in a major site plan, since those are, for the most part, Articles 3 through 10 are pretty quantitative, are pretty measurable things. They're not that arbitrary. And so I guess my question is, the EDM menu approach, if we had, would the points be reviewed if you had, take for example the one where you have a required point, whether it's one or more, for the park, would we want that to be reviewed and determined as one of the qualifying factors in the major site plan review, setting aside the meeting for a moment, but say the planners are doing, or Travis, they're doing their review, would their review take into account whether or not it met the 1 point requirement if it was in 300 feet of the park at that stage? Would it be at the major site plan review administratively as well?
I'm going to actually go to Commissioner Peters next.
Sorry, I didn't mean to change that.
Yeah, thank you. And I did just want to respond to Commissioner Kochmeyer that that's correct in that I did not see this in advance, so I wasn't prepared to respond to this. But we have heard from the community, as you noted, that that they're interested in the concept of a threshold for units for the major site plan review coming in front of the Planning Commission. So I did want to agree with you that we have heard that, and so that is what I'm interested in responding to, and finding a way to work with these two together. And so I appreciate the acknowledgement that this is what we have been hearing, and also that this is the first time I've seen it, and I would like to have the opportunity to put some data together and to come back before we move forward with this. And if I could sometimes, I guess there's no way to put these on the agenda in advance to review, but if there was, knowing that there was going to be a handout at the meeting, certainly open to that, and that would help me. And I think the commission in general, because, people do come and hand things out, commissioners do, and appreciate that, but having it in advance would certainly be helpful. So appreciate your consideration of that.
And again, just the clarification for the public, nothing is being voted on in a study session. These documents haven't even been turned into a draft that I'm prepared to say that I'd support it and put it on the website. We just aren't at that point. Now, the bigger question, though, is, and it's a little frustrating to keep coming back to something. Where exactly in the request from the City Council do you see the recommendation related to referrals to the Planning Commission? Because that's post-application. So where do you see that as being within the purview of this recommendation? Commissioner Peters.
Are you sure I'm next in line to speak?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that question. And actually, that is where, in seeing this and looking at the opportunity for the synergies with public engagement, that's the idea came. And so to work what we've heard in public comment in synergy with this. And so there would be an elective opportunity, an official process for public engagement early on through the enhanced development menu as proposed here. And that would be in preparation for, and certainly facilitate a final opportunity for the Planning Commission, where there's another, the public engagement would be, yes, as you said, the approval process is at the end, but if the earlier engagement is working, then we will see that, and the proof will be in the pudding at the very end.
So just for clarity, as it has been posted for 6 months now, the request from City Council, I would like the Planning Commission to study and provide recommendations for proactive community engagement process as a part of the large site plan pre-planning process. I completely get that you and some members of the community would like to see every application go to the Planning Commission. But that has never been a part of this request from City Council. This is pre-planning. It's getting earlier engagement. And every time we return to this notion that everything ought to be sent to the Planning Commission, I think Commissioner Buckley did an excellent job of explaining why that doesn't really make sense. But more importantly, the plain language of what we were asked to do, that is completely inconsistent. We are focused on making recommendations for earlier in the process, pre-application, not after formal application, pre-planning. I think that's pretty straightforward. Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Furman was asking a question earlier that I wanted to venture an answer to. When do these points that you need, like, if you have to get at least 1 point for the parks, or however many points we decide for the parks, when is that verified? My understanding is that all the EDM points are verified as part of the major site plan approval process. So it would be typically by staff at the end is my understanding of when that verification would happen.
So I would like to throw in another recommendation that is something that we directly heard from folks, and it is specifically on the pre-planning process. I think that part of our recommendations should be direction to City Council that they direct the staff to establish a notice system so that the very beginning of any proposed project is made publicly available, the address of that. I understand that the vast majority of those projects may fall by the wayside, but what I'm for is earlier engagement, earlier notice, and therefore I think there ought to be a notice system on the city's website that alerts people as soon as the first pre-planning meeting on any particular site. I also think that we should have a system that allows people to opt in so that they can say, look, I just want to be sent a notice every time a application or a pre-planning meeting happens. I may choose to do nothing about it. I may not care about that address. I may not be interested at all, but it might pique my interest. And I think that that is something that homeowners associations, neighborhood associations would very likely want to participate in. And that gets them engaged in the process at the very beginning. And I understand that there are some downsides to that. It's going to take more staff time and whatnot, but I think that's a good use of resources in order to get the community involved earlier on in the process. So that is one thing that I would like to throw out, and I would appreciate any thoughts anyone else has as to whether that should be a part of our recommendations or not. Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm generally supportive of that idea. I do know that right now on lakewood.org, there is a page you can go to that shows current planning projects. That page, even to me, has always been a little bit mysterious, like how long have these projects been on here? It's not clear. What's the status of it? It's not clear. When was the last time this website was even updated? It's not clear. So we do a little bit right now in terms of like online website notification of projects. If you know where to go look for it, it's not advertised very well. It's kind of buried under 5 or 6 or 7 links from the homepage, and it's lacking. I think a system like our chairman just described sounds a lot more robust, where you can sign up for an email list and get a notification every time a new pre-planning application comes in. I mean, we know 9 out of 10 of those die on the vine, but if you're a neighborhood organization and you really want to keep on top of everything, and maybe you don't mind getting an email several times a week saying, okay, an application came in for this or that, and it's out there, and they can decide whether or not they care. But it's transparent, and it's proactively telling the public that a thing's there. I think it's a very basic thing that government can do to just open up its information, and it makes sense to me.
Commissioner Furman.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing I was talking about, the planning dashboard. And I mean, it has, well, it's not always the most navigable if you're on a mobile device, but if you're on your computer, I mean, you're able to see the planner in charge, the stage and planning and saying, but it is, you got to set it up such that you're looking for the legend, what have you. I do think, yeah, if you had, there are places that have all the data, like you might have a plan. Like right now, you're not going to click on any one of those and get, well, unless it's changed a lot. It used to be you couldn't click on it and say pull up the plans that have been submitted or anything of that nature. Now there is some parts of that I'm sure that developers and various people won't love, but only because of as soon as you start looking at one property, other people are aware of it. But I too would support that, even in the face of that, mostly because I think it's I myself go to the planning dashboard quite often. I find it interesting to see where people are starting to look at and submit for work. But yeah, no, I would support that as well. So.
Commissioner Gribley.
Thank you, Chair. I think those are both great ideas. Maybe it could be all kind of compiled into an idea of just creating a better planning dashboard interface in general, where in that part of the website you can sign up for that email or whatnot. And similar to Commissioner Furman, I would love to opt in. That'd just be such a fascinating. There'd just be so many fascinating pieces of information coming through that chain. That'd be great to know. Thanks.
And I do think that the central message we heard in terms of all the notes that went down, and when I rewatched the hearings and our discussion on this, it is this more notice, earlier notice, more notice. One of the things, and like everyone else, I'm only seeing this for the first time, but I like about it is that I think it hits a number of things that we heard about. This notion of the community meetings is really goes to the kind of the town hall almost type of thing rather than a formal hearing. And I think that's interesting because that's one of the ideas we heard. I think that adding in this proposal the additional notification requirements goes directly, it heightens the notification requirements that goes directly to something that we heard. But again, all of it is focused only on the pre-planning process, not post-application. I would throw one other thing out there, which is that the very quandary that we have on these issues, as Commissioner Buckley and others have mentioned, is the notion of folks coming and saying, well, we want you to decide on A, B, and C, but we're only allowed to look at X, Y, Z. I am wondering if maybe one of our recommendations is that the City Council create more robust criteria. If in fact they want habitat to be evaluated, if in fact they want certain environmental things that are not currently covered, if they want those types of things to be there, then put them in the code before anybody buys the property, before any application is discussed, before any application is filed, rather than at some point when people go, oh, I didn't realize you could do this, I don't like it, and then tries to stop it. That really is the thing that is most difficult to do. So that's another thing that I would like us to think a little bit about, and kind of taking them to task for putting in those criteria rather than relying on a post ordinance challenge that then winds up in a forum that really doesn't have that sort of flexibility. Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to express support for that, and also for early notification and being able to be on a listserv and receive those application. I think those two would definitely lead to earlier community engagement, and I support both of those.
And Mr. Rice, I have an indication that Commissioner Overall might have her hand up.
Yes, and if she is listening, let's see. I promoted her to panelist and she did not accept.
If you can hear us, please accept.
Oh, there she is. So she is in attendance. And now, there she is.
Commissioner Overall, please.
I apologize for not being able to be there in person. I have not incredibly substantive input, but I'm here and I'm listening. First, I very much support the idea of early notice and early input that Commissioner Kolkmeyer has put forward. I would be very much in support of that. And second, I hope I'm not diverting the subject, but it's a study session, so maybe it's kind of a free-for-all. Can I inquire about the kind of point system and the thinking behind the weight in each one? You know, talking about the artistic design, having a point. What is the kind of mathematical calculus behind it, or is it just sort of a lack of a better starting point? And if they're Commissioner Buckley specifically, I'm asking if you have had any equivocation internally of like, should this be more weighted and should this be less weighted? Are there thoughts that we could be considering about that?
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you, Commissioner Overall. Yeah, I honestly, Eric and I got together for a couple discussions in the past few weeks, and he wrote a first draft of this, and I kind of edited it a bit, just based on some more discussion with him. I've had some equivocation on all these things, right? I think the one idea that I'm firmly tied to is that there is this idea already in the menu that there's $4,000 per point in the fee in lieu. And we took a stab at just a few of the points that we thought we could come up with like a reasonable cost of it. And it seemed like something you could do for about $4,000 per the point value of, the handful of things we're looking at. But this, in no way, I didn't go through, the whole menu. I don't know what the real, delta in cost is of, recycled building materials, or, using electric heating instead of gas, or anything like that that's in the menu. But the thing that, speaking for myself, I firmly wanted to tie to was like at least having some relationship in what we developed to the $4,000 per point, and making our points more enticing than that, so that a developer is much, much more likely to pick community engagement over a fee in lieu, especially. At least 1 point for the parks. I think Commissioner Peters said earlier tonight that seems low. Yeah, maybe it is low. I think one draft of this was like, I wrote, well, it's required if it's near a park. Well, how much is required? I don't know. Maybe we could increase that. The maximum number of points is 1/3 the total really the right value. Why not? I don't know. Why not 1/4 or I don't know. Why not 1/2? I don't have a great answer. It just kind of like it was a gut feel that it's a starting point, and people can deliberate and edit. So I don't know if that's a great answer, Commissioner, overall of what it is. But yeah, I think the number of points for all these things in my mind is still very flexible and fungible. And maybe I'll let Commissioner Gribbel-Unis, if he wishes to chime in with his own thoughts about this idea.
Commissioner Gribbel-Unis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the cost per point, as Commissioner Buckley pointed out, it's just a starting point for conversation. What him and I discussed multiple times is that how important is community engagement to the city? That can be answered by how much incentive they put towards the cost of these community engagement points. For example, just to go to the extremes, if they set each of these points at $10, every single developer is going to want to do this. The city is showing that it's the #1 priority over all the other points. The opposite end, if you make it cost more than fee in lieu, no one's going to do it. So again, we're putting the cost as a starting point, and then the thought being that if the Planning Commission decides to advance this into more detail, and if we decide to send this to City Council, that ultimately this is going to go back, or staff will be directed to edit this down, and I'm almost positive that they would have recommendations or alterations to better blend into the overall EDM menu.
Commissioner Peters.
I appreciate that that this was just a starting point and not a final, and that there could be some opportunities for refinements to it. And I guess, particularly the 1 point, because it looks like for, just holding an informational meeting is 4 points, right? And so that would meet the criteria fourfold. And I don't know if, for example, if, there's a concern about the value of trees being cut down, if holding a public meeting is really commensurate to that. And I think that's where I really appreciate Commissioner Kochmeyer's suggestion that maybe City Council consider some of the criteria and looking at changing it in advance to maybe accommodate some of these concerns. And I think in my suggestion, it was to have that public process at the beginning and at the end. And having it at the end is a public way to see how effective that earlier process has been, and how well that community trust that we're seeking to support has been enabled. And so, I think, the outcome of that, for example, say if there was a lack, right? If having that hearing at the end that is a public process by the Planning Commission, as other cities do it that way. If we see there's a lack, what do we do? Well, the next step is to look at how to change. And so I think how to make that change to address that lack. And I think Commissioner Kochmeyer is making a suggestion to, as part of this, to just look at making a suggestion that would address what maybe we've perceived and heard from the community as a lack. And so I just wanted to say that I do appreciate that, and I would appreciate the opportunity to think about this. I like the concept I definitely like the concepts. I do think the 1 point is maybe even excessively low. And maybe to develop it, I need more than just a single sitting. I would need to take a look at it and come back. And and I guess that's the limitation in only 2 people being able to meet. That, I didn't have that opportunity. But again, maybe we could find a way to post some of these things in advance to do that. In the future.
Commissioner Peters, I really think this is unfair. I mean, the implication you're making is that something was hidden from you and that you haven't been able to be given an opportunity, and it's exactly the opposite. We've got a couple of commissioners that have dug in, given it a lot of thought, and they're bringing us an idea. This is not being rushed through. This is just to figure out if there is support for the concept. You know that for almost a year now, I have insisted that no formal action be taken until the public sees not just a discussion, they see the actual written product. So every time you say, I need more time, this was dropped on me, I didn't get to see it, you are communicating something false to the public. That is not true. I saw this at the same moment you did. My reaction is, I think there's some good things in here, and I'd like to see the discussion move forward. But not for 1 minute should anyone come to the conclusion that anything is being held from anyone. What we have are commissioners who have put in time and effort, and I think that is to be praised, not criticized. Commissioner Peters.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that at no point have I ever made an assertion that anybody other than the 2 people who drafted it saw it. So, and I do appreciate, and I do feel there's merit, and I think that I need a little bit more time to think about how I would make those adjustments. So I certainly have never, again, that just the limitation of only 2 commissioners, like you can't have 3 commissioners meeting. So it's just by nature of the process. And so it's just a recommendation. And it's not a statement about anything else. So I just want to make that clear. And, it would be helpful if either one person or 2 people work on something, that we could see it in advance of the meeting, to have that posted. Is that, and it's just a simple practical matter?
Commissioner Peters, you know that we changed our policy because of how untransparent that is. We do not discuss these things behind the scenes, away from the public's eye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was asking for public posting.
We're
Publicly posting on Lakewood Speaks, that's all.
It hadn't gone through the commission yet. We can't post it until we at least have a discussion about it. That
You could
is
draft.
Commissioner, please. This has been a consistent change that we have operated under for a very long time, and it's meant to increase transparency. This notion about asking for additional time, I'm going to insist on additional time. That is what we have done every single one of these. This is the concept. It's a first conversation. If there's support for it, then we move to putting it in a format that the commission feels would be appropriate to show to the public. Then we get public comment. And as I've explained a number of times, at that point, we can change it. We can kill it. We can move it forward. But nothing is being hidden. Nothing is being sped up. And I just don't understand why we can't focus on the ideas rather than some implication that there's something nefarious going on, because it's not the case. I won't allow it. Commissioner Furman.
Yeah, pardon me for changing the subject, but so I was circling back to the exact phrasing of the agenda item, right? And as we look at it, right, we were tasked with the Recommendations for proactive community engagement process as part of the large site plan, right? So we understand that. And then additionally, the recommendations for potential park adjacent overlay. And I think we sort of hit on two of those, and I know at the risk of being redundant, the point of this is, and I think this is the danger of the public hearing, and I guess it depends on how we define public engagement, right? Is that it has the appearance of public engagement. If you did the hearing at the major site plan, it has the appearance of public engagement because people come and they're heard. But since it is, for the most part, a review of a major site plan's ability to meet the articles 3 through 10, which are for the most part, they're quantitative items. So while it has the appearance, there's not actual engagement other than them speaking. That's why I think I support this, because this is doing just that. It's encouraging actual engagement. Now, how the review happens, maybe that ends up in some other way, right, with the review. But currently, the idea of it being reviewed as part of the major site plan review administratively seems like that still fits the standard. And then the secondary piece, which a few of us have talked about, is the idea that to address the idea of park adjacent concerns or some of these other things, there may be cause to, and I don't know that it's an overlay so much as there becomes a park adjacent zoning or something that, and I will admit what I might like to see next to a park may not be what the public wants to see. And so again, I would encourage public engagement such that we understand what the public wants to see in a zoning change or in an additional zone that would be park adjacent. Again, public engagement there, but also dealing with the second item. And that's sort of where I stand in that I think we have met the intent of these two agenda items. I'm not suggesting we're ending the meeting. I'm just saying I think that's where we are currently.
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. Reacting to a few things, the idea of a minimum of 1 point required near a park. Here's just some more things to consider with that. For very small projects, they could still, in theory, opt for this menu item. Any project that's between 2,500 and 10,000 square feet is required to get 10 points from the enhanced development menu. We said we're capping the points you can get from this menu at 1/3 of the points that you need total. So that will be 3.33 points. You can't get fractional points in this menu, so realistically it's 3 points to not exceed 1/3. So for some projects, it's possible that there's a maximum of 3 points you could even earn. Well, what if a small project is next to a park? How high can we really go if it's not 1? It could be 2, but by just mathematical definition, it can't be more than 3. So, maybe we'd have to tweak the larger architecture of this. If we feel like 1 just seems like very low and we want it to be like you have to get a minimum of 10 if you're next to a park, well, that kind of implies that this menu item is only mathematically achievable by a very large project that, needs, say, at least 30 points, and we just categorically exempt the smaller ones. But people might be interested in even a small project next to a prized community park. So is that what we're going for? So I don't know. There's trade-offs, right? And I don't know if I actually have the answer to any of these issues other than, I hear you that 1 point seems low, but, also what else do we do? I think there's other answers. There's other potentials. There's other ideas. But we will have to make trade-offs to decide what are those other ideas we want to implement. That's all.
Commissioner Peters.
Thank you. I think that is a good point. What about, and I know you said there's multiple ways to address that. One could potentially be a minimum percentage of points. I'm certainly interested in other thoughts you may have on that. Because for a very large project, a minimum of 1 point is maybe potentially meaningless. So perhaps there could be a gradation and a percentage. I'm not sure, but I'm open to ideas, and that's one of the areas that I'd like to have some time to think about it and not complete our discussion this evening, because I just don't have an answer that at this moment for that and a couple others as well.
Could you try to explain to her that we're not completing our discussion? Commissioner Buckley.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just kind of throwing ideas out here. If we said, if it's near a park, maybe 10% of the total required points is the minimum, and that's still less than 33 1/3 or percent, or 1/3 of the total points maximum. And for a small project that's like, say, 10,000 square feet or less, that's 1 point out of 10 is 10%. Still pretty low, but maybe makes sense with the scale of the project. But if you have a bigger project that, say, needs 50 points, well, now you need a minimum of 5. That's a little more substantive. You can't just do the informational meeting if it remains 4 points, for example, right? I think that whatever decision this commission makes tonight about how we move this forward, we will have a future public hearing, is my understanding, on this document that I'm just first sharing with my fellow commissioners tonight. And so at that time, Commissioner Peters, I certainly welcome your more specific and thought out ideas that you've taken the time to reflect upon.
Commissioner Furman.
I guess
And after that, Commissioner Overall. Go ahead.
Okay, I guess I do I understand the idea of trying to get it above 1. And I support the idea. I also see potentially the point of like the impact that has in limiting. But I guess, the funny thing is I go back and forth in my head. The thought is essentially as soon as you have a minimum of 1, you're saying that community engagement, informational meeting, all of those are necessary. It seems like as soon as you have that single, it's a little weird because, right, as soon as you have that single point, and you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, you are going to have some form of community engagement, right? And
Yes.
As soon as you have community engagement, you're getting dangerously close to your informational meeting. So it seems like it's never really going to be 1 point. So, and this is me arguing for you and against you at the same time, suggesting that we could say, man, you need to make it 4 points, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the rare circumstance and a hard one to imagine. Like, really thread the needle to get the 1 point required and only 1 point. So while I agree with you, I don't know if you need to change it to get there, but anyway.
Commissioner Overall. You're muted.
Excuse me. I will also defer to Commissioner Buckley if there's a response to the last question.
Commissioner Buckley.
Yeah, not sure this is a response to Bill's question, but just, yes, I do agree generally that I think if you're going to go through the trouble of doing any of this and you have to get at least anything, it's going to almost very likely end up with more than 1 point. But I'm still comfortable with, maybe scaling it to the size of the project. And so 10% strikes me as a number that's like in scale of, that scales up nicely with the size of the projects and works well with the, again, also arbitrary maximum cap of 1/3, which no one's really discussed, which surprises me a little bit because, frankly, I just pull that number out of the air. I don't know if I've thought about that 1/3 cap as much as I want to. Like, who's to say it shouldn't be a quarter or a half, right? Or some other fraction.
And I would just note that I appreciate that very much because that's the point of this document. The point of the document is to introduce the concept, and then we give it time to think through, well, what should the weighting be? What should be the portions? That's really the benefit of having that. And again, we're not making any decisions tonight. Representative, I just promoted you. Commissioner Griblionis.
Thank you, Chair, for the promotion. I appreciate it. My suggestion would be that we change the total points that may be awarded under this to 50% for the draft, which will allow us room to make arguments to increase or decrease without maybe adding or attaching any type of bias to the draft document. Thank you.
Commissioner Buckley.
Commissioner Gribble-Unis, do you have a rationale for picking 50% of the total points required as the max you can get under the public engagement item, other than just gut feels, which that's where I picked 1/3 from, but I wonder if you have a more specific rationale that we can hang our hat on.
The rationale is purely to allow the planning commission to have a more detailed conversation if we choose to progress this at a later date without implying any type of, I guess, bias as to which direction above or below 50% this should be. That is my rationale.
So we've gotten some good feedback. Now I'd like to take everybody's temperature. Is there? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Overall had her hand up.
Sorry, Commissioner Overall.
I apologize.
No.
I don't want to interrupt the flow. I have a slightly philosophical question for the group too, which is, and I'm new here, so I may not totally understand, but to what extent do we expect the city council to impose a weighted system over ours? Where do our obligations for the weights of each, respective category begin and city council's end? I'm sort of trying to map out the contours of our job.
Sure, and it's a great question. Ultimately, the city council is the decider. On something like this, we make a recommendation. They may decide to do nothing with it. They may decide to run with the idea, but fundamentally change the way things maybe are fit together or are weighted or something like that. They may decide, as they did on the ADU regulations, to approve it exactly as it was passed by the Planning Commission. We gave them very, very specific changes on that. This one, I think, is going to be a little more conceptual. It'll probably be closer to what we gave them on affordable ownership and the policies that we recommended that they pursue on that. But one of the things that I really like about this idea as being a part of the mix is that it fits well with an existing concept that's in our code. This notion of, and it's not truly optional because you got to get points. The only optional part is which points do you go after? And what I thought was really clever about this when I first read it tonight is that it is designed to reward public engagement by a developer. And I got to tell you, I think those are easy points for a developer to agree to engage, to do these things. And if they can make an argument that they've made changes based upon community input, and for that they get points, my sense on a policy basis is that's a pretty powerful incentive. This area, these enhanced development menus are relatively new, so we don't have a lot of data, certainly not a lot of data in Lakewood, but it is a path that the city council has already supported, and I think that that's one of the reasons that it fits well with what they've already done.
Commissioner Goldmeyer.
Commissioner Peters.
Yeah, and I think the discussion about the cap, right? Because we'd be taking away from points for environmental activities, enhancements to projects. And I wonder if maybe there's an additional requirement or because I do think that is a balance, and that's another thing I would want to look at look closely. I don't have that enhanced development menu memorized to look at where the options are and to think about weighing that. So I think that is a good point on looking at what percentage could be allocated for this early community engagement, and maybe, and I don't know if I'm tied to this, but just putting it out there, for projects over a certain size, that maybe additional points through community engagement would be required. It's just trying to think about ways to encourage and reward the early community engagement. And I think, you know, in the proposal that I had, that would be rewarded at the end, that these projects, as they had a public hearing, it would facilitate that. But if, you know, perhaps there's a way that it doesn't take away from the other points, but also moves it into here. And just wondering if you've given any thought to that, Commissioner Buckley.
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. Yeah, to the extent I did think about the issue of, you know, we don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. We're taking away points from some bucket to put in this one. That's exactly why I came up with the 1/3 cap. I understand, I guess, Commissioner Gribbionis' point. If we move it to 50% of the total points, then we're right in the middle. You know, how can you say we're too high or too low if we're exactly at the midpoint? Okay, there's some logic there. But maybe a logic of 1/3 is that 2/3, still a clear majority, are points for the rest of the menu, which is more specifically focused on those items that have bona fide, like environmental, ecological, you know, green energy kind of benefits. So yeah, it is a balance, right? This might be opening the door, but, you know, one idea I thought of but didn't write down is like, you know, is the 1 point per 1,000 square feet what we want to keep it as? Do we, you know, increase the number of points per square foot that a project needs at the same time that we add more points to the menu, so that, you know, these points might still be enticing to make and get, but you need more of the points for all the other things too, so that we're not crowding it out in that way. But I think if you do that, we are running a risk of, I mean, all these points cost money, right? Like more or less, plus or minus, something kind of tethered to around $4,000 a point. And so at what point is just increasing more points doing things like increasing the cost of all development that we want to be wary of, or potentially like making the menu more mandatory, in that if you just need more points and there's only one extra item, you know, or you just have to do more, and is that more of the burden than was already carefully considered and calibrated when this got thrown in? There's so many issues to consider. And that's exactly why I know that all of you will ponder this and, you know, be even more prepared at our next meeting to talk about them and some of your thoughts about how to strike the right balance here.
Commissioner Gribbionis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is again a starting point for, you know, if we say 50%, for the discussion to evolve over time at our next meeting to determine what percentage of these should be allocated to this item. You know, I could be missing it, but there's not, you know, the language under the intent of the EDM talks about community amenities, and what we propose is just addressing the request from City Council, and I think what we send back to them could be something along the lines of, you know, just drawing awareness to, it's kind of up to City Council or staff potentially to evaluate how important community engagement is to them. And they could then, you know, we could create descriptions of, if, you know, you set it to 50%, it would be for this reason. If you set it to 100%, it's for this reason. Giving them the ability to throttle, again, how important community engagement potentially is. And also, whatever gets potentially put forth to City Council, it can always be changed in the future. This is an idea. This could be submitted and be put into action tomorrow, and maybe it would completely transform the community engagement process in Lakewood for the better and uncover so many wonderful opportunities that we aren't even thinking about right now. But we just want to create the opportunity for those unknowns to occur. Thanks.
Commissioner Peters.
Thank you, Chair Kokemeyer. I think my concern is that in that balance that we've been talking about, this could potentially be ineffective. And that's, I think, what I want to avoid. So, for example, we're 300 feet from an existing park or open space, and we hold one informational meeting, and then nothing else happens. I mean, I guess I would like to see an informational meeting plus some sort of responsiveness. And I guess a thought, and I feel like I don't have the answer at this point, and it may be a different structure, but what if the informational meeting was a half a point? So then that would require another point to come from the menu, which would relate to something. But then, a very simple art installment could be done. I mean, somebody could come and, there could be some very significant environmental issues, and does an art installment equal, 500 trees being cut or something? And so that's where my concern is. And I just don't know if this alone, without some other incentive or requirements, will actually meet that need.
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Peters, one idea that I think I'd be uncomfortable with in response to that concern you just expressed very well, perhaps rather than just doing away with the number of points you need next to a park, just if it's next to a park, we just require that, or within some distance of a park or open space, we just require that the developer engage in option 2, right? And so they'll get some number of points from option 2, and we don't maybe even state the minimum, or maybe we do state a minimum, but if they go down the path of having to earn something from option 2, I think is the point that Commissioner Furman made earlier. Once you've had the meeting and you've already solicited the impact and you're going to do one thing, it's just the next logical step to do a few more. And then that way, since we're locking the near park developments into option 2, it's not just a meeting to say, hey, community, here's a project. It's ensuring that the meeting has some substance and that something from the meeting that is suggested does in fact have to come out of it to get the points. And again, just throwing that out there as an idea.
Commissioner Gripp-Leonis.
Thank you, Chair. Just my personal opinion, I don't speak for Commissioner Buckley when I say this, but to me, the spirit of this point is voluntary, and again, trying to put forth the best faith effort from both the developer and the community. I don't support requiring this at this time in any way, but I could still be convinced otherwise. I just haven't been convinced thus far.
Commissioner Furman.
Sorry, it took me a second with the microphone there. I think, so when you look at the EDM menu as it stands today, right, there's a couple of types of points, right? There's energy efficiencies, there's some green building elements, and then there's a handful of pieces. I mean, there's a couple in here that don't exist in either of those worlds necessarily, or maybe sort of equity or social justice kind of ideas. But, and why I'm bringing this up is, for example, within some of the green building ones, a number of them, and also within, there's an ADA one that's sort of about type B units, obviously. Within a number of these, honestly, they sort of go away. Like the type B unit one, you need certain circumstances where you're not doing type B units to a fairly high percentage. I mean, I think the code, I was looking up again, I couldn't remember the exceptions where you get out of it. The point I'm getting at is the menu can get small pretty quick. And so I'm assuming the community meetings are going to really rely on people coming up with new ideas that are going to fit within item 28, right, the other category. And so that they'll have to then be reviewed by the planning director for applicability, right? So the one thing I am wondering about is we are working on this under the assumption that the public is going to come with ideas. And I know we can't go too far down the road on this, but I'm trying to imagine what are going to be the community engagement ideas that are going to be thrown out, right? Especially as we talk park adjacent, right? It's going to tend to be probably, and I know I shouldn't make assumptions, but I'm assuming it's going to be stuff that is actually probably pretty expensive, deeper setbacks from the park, steeper bulk planes, really pulling stuff away, I would guess. The point I'm getting at this is the meeting itself is the one sure thing out of this. The rest of the sure things are ones that they are likely, in the end, the energy efficient ones are the ones that are all going to have to participate in to get their points to some degree. And so I guess the only worry I have, if you get too high in points and you don't give a point at all for doing the meeting itself, is that there may be some real challenges, and I'm not placing any judgment on this, but on the kinds of input that people give at a meeting like this, because they may be asking for some very big things. If they aren't things already required in the zoning, they may be things that are going to be very difficult for people to swallow. So I don't know. I think that what I'm getting at is I do think that you need to hold on to the point for the meeting, so you have it in there, and there may be some need for language to tie in. I mean, you have the language about additional points for when the people meet something that the community talks about, but there may need to be some language about meeting points that tie into existing items or something, only because I don't yet know what is going to come out in a meeting. So, sorry, I was a bit rambling, but the point I'm making is that, I think you need to maintain the point, because I'm not sure all engagement is going to provide stuff that they can really effectively achieve.
Commissioner Buckley.
I'm sorry, I think I was on from earlier.
Commissioner Griblionis.
Thank you, Chair. Good points, Commissioner Furman. That's something Commissioner Buckley and I discussed. The idea that you have no idea what is going to be proposed during these meetings. It could be anything. It could be something very expensive. They could all be very expensive. That's why we put the language in there that this is optional, and that's at the discretion of the developer to choose what they decide they do and don't want to move forward with. And I think the idea by giving the discretion to the developer is it allows the community engagement process to have no bounds, and you could throw out any big ideas that the community can dream of, or little ideas, and there might be a unique case that we're not thinking of where the big idea is going to be something amazing for the community, and the developer sees it as a great opportunity for their site as well. A park walkway expansion, for example, or a pond next to a park. Who knows? But again, these are really big commitments that could be technically challenging for the developer to move forward with. So again, we need to give them the opportunity to evaluate these and decide what is going to be ultimately best for their project that also benefits the community based on the feedback they've received.
Yeah, and I really think that's the heart of this. The thing that appeals to me so much about this is right now, people that are concerned about a project have no power, no leverage, if the developer thinks they can meet the terms of the code. And therefore, we are saying there's an obligation. It's not really an option. It's an obligation to get a certain number of points. All of these points are valuable things to the community, to the city, to the environment, to the neighbors. And if we can say, you have to hit a certain number of points, and give them the option to come up with creative ways to do that. They are wisest if they take ideas that are doable that come from the community, obviously. That's just an easy PR win. So for the first time, we would be putting in place something that actually empowers people, and I think most importantly, empowers them early in the process. So I feel very supportive of going forward to further discuss this concept, and I'm wondering if anyone on the commission objects to us exploring this as one of our recommendations going forward. And Commissioner, overall, will assume you don't object unless I see your hand.
I don't object.
Thanks. So now here's the next question for the group is what level of specificity do you want to see as our public submission? Do we want to see this draft as the working document that we make available? Or are there changes in this concept that the commission feels are appropriate? Or even, do we think this concept is so early on that we want to do something that is less detailed? All of those options are available to us. Commissioner Gripolionis.
My preference would be that we leave this as is and that all of the commission has the opportunity to review it thoroughly over the time until our next meeting, and then we, any commissioners that want to propose changes to this, come to that meeting with that proposed language ready for discussion.
Are there objections to having this be the working document? And again, it's really important for folks to understand that it doesn't mean we're endorsing this. We can't do that in a study session. It means that all of the elements of this and any other questions are fair game. And if after our next discussion, where we'll have the public's involvement, that's not the end of it. There is no requirement that anything be passed by a certain deadline. Commissioner Peters.
I have a request. Whatever we post, can we make sure that it says draft across the top? Would that be amenable?
Commissioner Buckley.
Sure. Yeah, the top line of the handout I gave you does say draft on it, so yeah, we can make that even bigger and bolder. Not a problem at all. Chairman Kolkmeyer, can I?
Go ahead, Commissioner Buckley.
All right, yes, I wanted to otherwise speak. You proposed an idea earlier tonight, Chair, that it sounded like we had easy consensus on to, recommend to the City Council that staff develop a more robust website and email listserv notification process for every new development application. I'm wondering if I can make a request of you that you write something out formally to the level that Eric and I have that could be part of our discussion at the next meeting. Since we've talked about that idea too, let's put that in more writing and specificity so the public can see it, so we all have time to review it as well. And is that a thing you're comfortable with, or?
Oh, not just comfortable with,
Yeah.
It's what I'm insisting on.
All right, great.
It's this again. This is the fifth or sixth time we've done these recommendations. We do them the same every single time, where we have the discussion, we get a sense of what the concepts are, then we commit them to writing and make them available. So yes, I was just going to ask next about those other ones, if there was any objection to us putting those in writing as well. But Commissioner Furman.
Well, the one thing I was going to say is, as it pertained to the zoning recommendations for park adjacent, obviously I think that one is the one that will most need public engagement and is going to be part of the process that the planning is already going through. So I don't know whether the goal there would be merely to recommend that provide some sort of recommendation about considering planning in their efforts to consider some sort of zoning change or additional zoning for park adjacent, I don't know that, given the time and what's going on, is the right place for us to make specific recommendations beyond considering a special zoning for that. But
It is ripe. This is the meeting when, at our last meeting, I asked everyone to come prepared to be able to make particular suggestions conceptually. So if you wanted to suggest something specific on park adjacent, we will test it and see how much support there is for it.
Well,
Commissioner
I guess
Furman.
my issue is, to be specific, my suggestion is that the park adjacent zoning be considered by planning, because I don't want to, especially given the sensitivity around this for the public, I don't necessarily want to say, I suggest they have more restrictive bulk planes or setbacks, more that it is something worth considering that there is some sort of park adjacent zoning, that sort of thing. I know it's a wishy-washy answer for him, but.
Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. The idea of park adjacent zoning for me is one that at a very minimum, I think I need a lot more specificity spelled out to me to even make sense of what the idea is. I'm going to think of some parks that are in Lakewood. Lastly Park, which happens to be in my neighborhood, is surrounded entirely by single-family residential zoning. It is a lovely park. A little bit west of there on Florida is Founders Park, a smaller but also a gem of a pocket park, surrounded mostly by single-family zoning, but also by some condos. I can think of like Wright Park in the Union Square neighborhood where I lived a decade ago. It's entirely surrounded by high-density residential, a lot of condos and apartments out there. I can think of Bellows Park in it's surrounded by like Lakewood's industrial district, so very different zoning there. In a sense, we could think of the bike trail along the light rail line as kind of like a long linear park that we have. I don't know if the city officially considers that or not, but I mean, it is public space. It's got trail. It's got art. It's a cool place to move through and be, and it's entirely surrounded by mixed use zoning. Every park in Lakewood is already surrounded by just about every zone district we have. So park adjacent zoning is just the zoning of the districts adjacent to the park. What do we do with such a incredible diversity of existing uses allowed and desired? I just don't even know where to begin thinking about that without a lot more specificity, but I'm always welcome to hear your ideas, Commissioner Furman, if you can spell them out more.
Commissioner Furman.
Well, conceptually, that's the point. I'm saying I don't have specific ideas. And that's exactly why I'm saying, even though this is one of the agenda items listed, right, is one of the specific, what I'm saying is that I don't think that we are in a position to tackle it more, only to suggest that if we're going to address that agenda item, we're simply addressing it by saying it is worth looking at, and whether it's a zoning overlay or what it becomes. But essentially, I don't think it would be a rezone that changes the dynamics of anything that exists. The concerns people have tend to be, as we have seen, existing buildings being demolished, or greenfield being used by overly tall buildings, in their opinion, or various things. So I think you could address people's concerns if that's the way planning felt made the most sense. Point I'm getting at more is to address that one agenda item. I am actually, I guess, officially suggesting the can is kicked to planning and the efforts they're already doing, rather than suggesting we tackle it. It's sort of the opposite of saying I have ideas.
So my suggestion on that is to kind of make it a clearer push for City Council. Rather than say that this is something that they ought to look at, I think we have heard that people are very concerned about park-adjacent properties. And I would like our recommendations to include that. If we're not ready today to say there ought to be certain buffers, or there ought to be certain restrictions on, dimensional standards, if we're not prepared to say things like that, could we not at least say to City Council, we believe that it's crucial that City Council adopt park-specific criteria that are known with the original zoning, rather than something that gets brought up later. So if they want to have a criteria related to habitat, or if they want to add additional requirements on stormwater, or they're interested in buffers or something, then they need to adopt an ordinance that puts those criteria in the code before a project is proposed. That would be my thought. And that was, and I probably didn't do a good job of explaining that earlier, but that was one of the things that I think is a key recommendation that could come out of this group, which is City Council, our recommendation as a planning commission, understanding what our job is, you must add additional criteria to protect parkland if that is what you, as elected officials, determine you want to do, and not leave it unanswered. That would be my suggestion. Commissioner Furman.
That's essentially what I was getting at, is that it's an effort to address that one item, but saying that we're not going to, I don't see us being in the right place to make those standards. Just because it's, yeah, it is very impactful, so.
Well, give it some thought. Maybe by the next time we meet, we will have some ideas on that. Commissioner Buckley.
I'm sorry, I think I just let my lights on again.
So, there does not appear to be objection to having as one of our recommendations an EDM approach. Is there an objection to this being the draft that we, as a body, make available to the public for them to comment on? Okay. Is there an objection to us putting in writing a recommendation around the concept of requiring the planning department to have an online system that identifies projects from the very first pre-planning meeting and allows an opt-in function for anyone that wants to be notified of pre-planning meetings taking place? Is there any objection to that? Is there any objection to us putting in writing a recommendation that the city planning department's dashboard must be upgraded to be more user-friendly and provide detailed information about projects in the pre-planning process? And then, is there any objection to this one that we just talked about, which is I would craft something that says, we believe that there is significant public concern about park-adjacent properties and taking into consideration vested property rights and the pre-planning, proactive nature of what we're trying to do is get people involved, that they should articulate and adopt specific criteria if they deem it appropriate to specifically address the unique issues of parkland adjacent development. Commissioner Peters.
I don't know if I'm willing to move forward without some specifics on that, because depending on those specifics, they could be helpful or they could be harmful. So I'd like us to maybe have some ideas before we would move something like that forward. And I'm interested, because you brought it up, do you have any thoughts on specifics?
I do. And I got the sense from the conversation earlier that maybe others hadn't. So I don't want to push this if folks aren't. But one of the things we've heard about is concerns about habitat. And I don't think that is something that we typically look at. And actually, Mr. Rice, I will ask you, is there anything that you believe in our code that addresses developments that specifically addresses the potential adverse effects on habitat from a development, other than environmental concerns?
Right, not specifically related to habitat.
So that would be for me, something that I would be very comfortable suggesting that the city council ought to consider putting in as a criteria. And again, the reason is that if that's in the code before someone buys the property, before someone begins to develop, before someone has a pre-planning meeting, then we're not in the circumstance of neighbors going, well, why don't you protect this? Well, it's not in our law. So it ought to be in the law. That's a really important point, I think, for all of our discussion, and I think we have consensus on that, which is that that's the earliest point in the process that the public is protected. And that's really what I'm interested in, as opposed to late in the project second guessing what staff has done. I would rather have the issues that are important to the community addressed from day one. Commissioner Buckley.
Thank you. I partly agree and partly disagree with something Commissioner Peters said. Yeah, without some more specificity of what was envisioned near parks, your explanation of habitat is useful in that vein. I might potentially be entirely not supportive, or I might be enthusiastic. I just don't feel like I know enough about it. Even with that brief description of habitat, I'm not sure how I land yet. I guess maybe where I will depart ways with Commissioner Peters is a bit is I more than welcome you writing your ideas down, and so we can talk about them more at the next meeting. And we will through further discussion and eventual public input at a hearing, we can all make up our own minds about whether it's a good idea or not to proceed with something. And so I think taking the next step to explore something is a good thing to do.
Commissioner Peters.
I want to go into this habitat a little bit more. Are you thinking that consideration would be given to surrounding habitat or habitat that is on the property? Just interested in a clarification on that.
Well, my view is that what we've heard is concerns about effects in the park by adjacent development. And what was sent to us was a request for recommendations on park adjacent development. So the effect on habitat in parks by adjacent development. Commissioner
Thank you.
Peters.
Thank you for that clarification. I support that. Yeah.
So this is an opportunity, if we want serious consideration by the public, to put other ideas out there and see if there are any further recommendations that we think are worthy of our consideration over the next many weeks before we meet again. I just don't want to close off the discussion if folks have additional things that they would like to suggest. Commissioner Peters.
Thank you, Chair. I want to go back to habitat. Commissioner Buckley had recommended that you put something in writing and that we have that to review. I didn't hear a response to that.
I think I said yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So again, and Commissioner Peters, every one of these recommendations we've handled in the same way, right? We decide conceptually what we want to do. We then reduce it to writing. We make it available on the website, and we invite public comment to both comment on Lakewood Speaks and in person. But I think it's really important to reduce it to writing and give them that opportunity to see it. You had asked for something different this time, which is to have part of it stamped as a draft. That's not our form. If that's something that's so important to you, I can go along with that. But typically what we have done every single time on this is we draft it as a resolution, which then you're looking at a document that then people can say, scratch number 3, add number 4, delete all of page 2. I think that's better practice. It seemed important to you that it be stamped draft rather than be in our usual format of a resolution. We can do that unless you're willing to do it the the typical way we've done every other one of these.
I really appreciate your consideration. I would certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
So you
For-
do
in
not
draft.
want it in resolution form?
Not at this point. A draft would be very appreciated.
Any other thoughts or comments? Commissioner Buckley?
I would say that sooner or later it does need to be in resolution form because at some point the body needs to act. So, what is the timeline for getting there?
Commissioner Peters?
I think that'll depend on the discussion, but I'd just like to see the initially as a draft. So I'm not asking for multiple, I'm just, maybe the next one it comes out as a resolution just for the first time that it's presented as a draft. So I think that'll be up to the commission.
Okay. If there are no further thoughts, that's our only agenda item for tonight. Now we want to talk in terms of schedule. So our next scheduled meeting is actually August 7th. Because of what's on that agenda, I'm inclined not to suggest that this be revisited that quickly. We have the option of a meeting on the 31st, but I'm wondering if it would be better if we push it to the, the 21st? August 21st, Wednesday, August 21st, as a regular hearing when this issue would be discussed again. Is that acceptable to everyone? So that's more than a month of thinking. Commissioner Buckley.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the conclusion of the discussion we just had with Commissioner Peters is about a document stamped draft versus documents being in the form of the resolution, but do we want to discuss more documents stamped draft on the 31st, that's in 2 weeks, and have a hearing with like a resolution prepared on, that second meeting in August? I'd be comfortable with that. I'd wonder what the rest of the commission is.
Commissioner Peters.
I would be comfortable with that as well. And then just a question, you had mentioned August 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me I don't have anything on my calendar for August 7th.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but let's resolve this issue first. Are we meeting before that on the 31st, at which point we would then hopefully have enough consensus to put it in our usual format and then have that appear on the 17th of August? Or I'm a little torn on it myself because I'm
14th.
concerned folks.
21st. I think you meant 21st, not 17th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, August 21st.
Yeah.
Commissioner Furman.
Well, first of all, I'm good with August 21st. If you were talking about the sooner version, July 31st, I won't be available, but
Commissioner Peters.
July 31st would be another study session. Is that correct?
Well, you know how I feel about study sessions.
And tonight is a study session.
It is, which means
Okay.
the public was excluded, and I understand that, folks on the commission wanted that, but that's never my
Okay,
preference.
but we won't have public input.
If you want another study session on the 31st, that's right, you would exclude the public again.
No, I want public input with a draft. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, that doesn't work because the resolution would be what they would be commenting on. So I'm fine slowing this down along your lines.
It's not, I know I would, that's a tough call, because I definitely want public input on the draft before we put a draft resolution out. That That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, that's not the way a planning commission works. If we're going to post a actionable item at a hearing and take comments on it, it should be in the proper format. Again, it's in the format, it can be voted down. It can be approved. It can be amended. But we don't take public comment on notes or drafts. At least we never have, but.
We have in the past, prior to your joining, but
Yeah.
we have definitely done that in the past.
We have not done that on any of these recommendations for city council. It's the same format we've done every single time.
Yes, and the Planning Commission did accept public input in the past.
So I'm not certain what the will of the group is. Commissioner Peters, what is your preference? And then we'll see, because I'm not sure what you're recommending at this point.
My recommendation would be to have a meeting on the 31st and to accept comments on Lakewood Speaks with these drafts
Yeah.
that we're putting together.
Yeah,
And then
I
create a resolution from that.
Yeah, I can't support that because then we'd be putting something in front of the public that I had not voted on, that I could not say that I was supporting, so it would not reflect my views. I think we need to put it in resolution form in order to give them something that's actionable. I understand that that is something you're not prepared to do, that you would like more time, that's fine, but we can't have that sort of process. We need to get our act together and then make it available to the public. And again, you can vote no, you can offer amendments. There is nothing decided merely by it being put, the resolution being put on Lakewood Speaks. Commissioner Furman.
It feels like a semantic distinction here. I mean, essentially, right, if we actually title it draft and we put it out as draft, it's not actionable. It doesn't carry the weight of a resolution. And so as a result, it delays it essentially by another meeting. And so the point is if, I guess I'm arguing for your resolution only under the auspices that they've been called resolutions, they are resolutions, but essentially not unlike a draft, we edit them, change them, vote on them. If that is really what's necessary to move forward, it feels like that is the route, but.
Commissioner Peters.
This was just a question for Commissioner Furman. Would you be available remotely on the 31st?
No, I suppose I don't really need that. Let's see, I'm trying to time change and whatnot. I mean, I could be, I could be.
Based on this discussion, I'm actually going to recommend that we split the baby. And we follow our normal procedure of putting it in resolution form, but we delay that until August 21st. That gives you 5 weeks to think, and then you'll have at least a couple of weeks to review that draft. Is that enough time, Commissioner Peters?
My request is to have the opportunity for public input prior to putting a resolution out for discussion and amendments. I just feel like it's really valuable for public input earlier. And, one of the objectives that we're looking at in the site plan review is the pre-planning. This is like pre-planning for the resolutions that come out. So again, I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to have that meeting on the 31st And I would like to see how that works out. Will the public, at least to give this opportunity, public can review this meeting that we've had. They can submit comments to the Planning Commission. Doesn't have to go through Lakewood Speaks, but I believe that there is a need and an interest in this. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, but this is what I've heard, and I would like to try that.
I feel sometimes that I'm just doing a poor job of explaining, and I apologize. What I'm suggesting is more time to think, more public involvement, not less. So if that's what you are concerned about, I think what I just suggested is probably the best scenario. You can disagree, but it is the best scenario because that ensures not just that the public gets to see it, but they see it at the same time we see it, which is more transparent, and they get the exact same number of opportunities to comment on it. So I'm not quite sure why that's not an acceptable compromise.
It's not my preference, and if anything, having a meeting farther out takes it, I think having a meeting July 31st and having this opportunity, I've asked, I know you said that you were willing to entertain it, and now you've backed off on that, so I guess I would just ask the commission to consider that, and I appreciate the consideration, and I appreciated your offering that. I guess if you're taking it off the table now, I think it's one of these things, if you try it once and it doesn't work out, then you can say that you've entertained the ideas that I've had. Whether you agree with them or not, whether you see value, I guess my ask is that you give it a try, that the commission give it a try, and then determine if there's value in it, rather than stating what you think is best and that I should also think the same, which I don't.
Commissioner Buckley.
Did we not have, I think, 2 meetings, one in February and one in March, where the public came into this chamber and commented, and there were plenty of comments on Lakewood Speaks too, about this general, very high-level request from council, and the 13 bullet points that our chair outlined at the outset of this meeting, I think, was re-summarizing and reminding us all of some of the highlights of those public comments we got months ago. So to me, we've done the step of getting public comment on, the high-level request and what some big-picture ideas can be, and now we're in this process of honing in and discussing amongst ourselves and adding some meat to specific ideas, including ideas from those discussions, and working towards the process of getting a resolution. Where I personally fall is that I want more public engagement, but the most useful spot for more public engagement is when we have a resolution ready. And I think if we want more time to just discuss ideas amongst ourselves, then we can do that in another study session on the 31st if we feel we need it. If we don't feel we need it and we just want to go straight to resolutions and public comment on the second meeting in August, then I'm okay with that too. I think what I don't want is just more public comment that's not tied to any specific ideas or work or progress we've done. So I think if all the ideas we've discussed tonight are in writing in a resolution form for the second meeting in August, and we have public comment, then that will, I think, achieve what I'm saying I want. And if I'm understanding you correctly, Commissioner Peters, it will achieve what I think you want as well.
Commissioner Peters.
I'll let you all decide, because obviously you're a majority, and so I guess I will just make one last point, and then I'll leave it at that. But if we put these out as drafts, then it gives an opportunity for public input in that process. So you're correct in that the public provided the high-level input. And then we came and refined and narrowed it. And then there's a step between that refined and narrowed to the very end. And I just feel that at the very end, when you see something in resolution, even if it's not the intent, it gives the appearance that we already kind of know what we want to do. And it's, again, the point that I've made before is that there's a lot of momentum to move to the finish line once something is in resolution form. And so this intermediary step gives the opportunity for folks to provide input before we reach that. And I feel it's natural, I feel it's logical that there was a comment on the broader piece, and now we have some specifics, and then to have some input on those specifics, and then to come with the final resolution. And I think this is the same process that even in the projects, bringing a project to the finish line for a development project would benefit from. And I'd like to see it on our planning commission and give it the opportunity to demonstrate its usefulness.
Commissioner Furman.
For my own clarity, is what you're imagining basically a resolution that would be published to the public, but that says draft?
Commissioner Peters.
No, it would be, as was discussed in the meeting, this paper would be posted, and it would say draft, and then the other concepts that we discussed would be provided as a draft.
So I must tell you, I think we're spending more time than it deserves on this particular issue. I thought it was fairly straightforward, but other than is how many people on the commission are comfortable sticking with what has been our practice on every single one of these recommendations, that we take what we have suggested from this session, put it in a draft resolution form, post that for public comment, invite public comment. And again, if there's concerns, we don't have to take action on it. We can have further meetings. So I guess I'm looking for comments from each commissioner as to whether that would be acceptable or not. Commissioner Buckley.
I find what Commissioner Klockmeyer just suggested is acceptable, and I'll add, for whatever anyone thinks it's worth, is that I would think it's very, very, very unlikely that I would be prepared at that second meeting in August to actually pass any of those resolutions in final form. I think with our draft ADU resolutions, we went through 4 or 5 iterations in public hearings. With the affordable housing one, we went through 2 or 3. I think even with the gas station and car wash one, which we had a lot more consensus on, I think there were 2. Yeah, I think it would afford the opportunity for some public comments. And, I think it's just good parliamentary practice that if there are going to be any major changes to a resolution, that you extend it out, continue it to another meeting and allow more time for reflection and an updated written version of what the major changes are to be out there amongst the public. And so I would certainly anticipate that's what we would do after hearing the comment on the 21st.
Right. Commissioner Griblionis.
Thank you, Chair. I found the process we've been following since you become chair to be very effective, and has resulted in some great collaboration and us getting to actionable items in a timely manner. So I would find the proposed original idea acceptable.
Thank you. Commissioner Furman.
Before I make my statement, can I ask for clarity?
Sure.
Most of this is included in that resolution as it stands anyway, based on what we're proposing. right?
Most of what?
What is in this document we had?
Yeah, I think earlier
it's-
we'd asked
Yeah.
if there was objection to starting with that draft, but we've already highlighted some areas that
Yeah.
people are probably going to suggest changes to.
So I support the resolution approach.
Commissioner Overall,
I support the approach as well.
Commissioner Peters,
Thank you for considering my proposal.
is your light still on for, okay? Great. Well, I appreciate everyone's work, and I want to especially thank Commissioners Buckley and Griblionis for taking the time to really think through a creative idea and bring it to us. But it is being incubated, and we, of course, don't know where it may wind up. All right, so the 7th. Our next meeting is the 7th, and that meeting is going to be it's a crucial meeting, so I'm hoping that everyone can be available. This will be a hearing on an appeal of the director's decision on a minor subdivision. I wanted to inform fellow commissioners and the public that I intend to recuse myself from that hearing because of our city code of ethics. And I think it'd be useful, and I know the hour is late, but it'd be useful to take a couple of minutes just to remind everyone about this process. The city code of ethics applies to us as commissioners. Section 2.03 states that it's a breach of fiduciary duty to vote or attempt to influence other commissioners if you have a personal or private interest or fail to disclose even an appearance of impropriety. What I want to underline for everyone is that this ordinance prohibition is actually broader than our Section 4.4 conflict of interest section, which only refers to a financial interest. So obviously, if you have a financial interest in a case that comes before you, you're clearly conflicted. But the code of ethics for the city that applies to us is broader than that. And I think a lot of times people conclude that recusal requirements are more narrow, and in fact, they're fairly broad. And then finally, I would note that subsection D of that ordinance lists that the possible implications of a failure to recuse is that a complaint can be filed with the city council, who, among their remedies, could order recusal or even remove someone from the commission. So that is, I take very seriously. So why am I recusing myself? This is the tricky part, because I want to be as transparent as I can, but I do not want to prejudice any commissioners. So I'm only going to say this. 2 reasons. 1, if I participate, and based on the evidence, I come to the conclusion to vote against a particular party, I am concerned that that party will think it's retribution for something that they did previously. And I don't want a member of the public to think that that would be the basis of a decision. So it's better for me to stay out of the decision. Secondly, and ironically, before I was aware that this could come to the commission, I actually was asked to make some inquiries and see if I could help resolve the disagreements among the parties to this particular matter. I did not succeed, and which is unfortunate, but I did become involved in that way to try to help them. And as soon as I learned that this would potentially come to the commission, I took no further action. But I think that that's a sufficient reason for me to recuse as well. So it's just, I think, a good reminder that none of us are indispensable to the process. And I have every confidence that Vice Chair Buckley will conduct that appeal perfectly, and that all of the commissioners will take their jobs very seriously. And with that, Mr. Rice, are there any other scheduling issues that we have?
At this time, I don't have anything on the calendar, and I'm working through several kind of moving items. So the next meeting will be the appeal on the 7th, and then the following meeting is going to be August 21st.
Yes.
Okay. No, so I don't have any scheduling items. I can, there are 2 special use permits, potential rezoning, and a site plan case that I'm looking at scheduling, and the art master plan for community resources, but I don't have dates at this point in time.
Okay.
I do have a couple
Sure.
items, if you don't mind. I want to remind, when we don't start at 7 o'clock, we do get complaints. We got some complaints this evening, so just kind of a reminder, the meeting started at 7. You'll find the commissioners that found a blue bag at your desk. That's treat bags from the board and commission meeting if you didn't attend. So those are yours to keep. They're thank you items. Paper code. Commissioner Buckley did not have a copy of the job role of the planning commissioner, so I've got him that. And I also provided him a paper copy of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance. Is there anybody else that wants a hard copy? There's 1, 2, 3, and I printed 10, so I just have to put them together. All right, and I will check. Let's see. Commissioner Overall, would you like a paper copy of the zoning and/or subdivision ordinance?
I would very much like that, thank you.
Okay, so there's 4, and then I will check with Commissioner O'Neill. All right, I can have those put together for the 7th. If you, I can. Why don't I do this? I'll let everybody know when they're prepared. If you want to stop by the office and pick it up, you're more than welcome to do that. And if not, I'll bring them to the meeting on the 7th. Let's see, schedule, code, meeting times, gifts, that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Peters, is your light still on from earlier? Or? Commissioner Peters?
Yeah, thank you. There's a possibility I may not be available on the 7th. We'll have to see. I have a family member undergoing cancer surgery out of state, so I'm working details out about that.
Okay, then there were 5. Uh-oh. Commissioner Overall. Oh, no, unrelated to this.
I'm
Go ahead.
apologizing for the late start, which was likely on me. That was on me, I apologize.
No problem at all. Thank you all, and with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:56.